Now we're getting into risk exposure and risk tolerance. Sole proprietorships, because you do not register with the state, they provide no liability protection in and of themselves. Because they're not governed by Washington or Oregon law, they provide no liability protection. So if you get sued, as a sole proprietor, your business gets sued, then you are on the hook for everything, including, so your personal assets are at risk, your house, car, investments, they're at risk if somebody sues your business. So in order to get any sort of liability protection, you have to rely on business insurance. So contact your local insurance carrier, get some business insurance, and hopefully that'll be good enough. Now, if you really are concerned about liability exposure, then we go into the LLCs. Now, LLCs, the level of liability protection is still somewhat unknown. LLCs are still relatively new. They started in Washington in 1994, but the first state that actually implemented the LLC structure was Wyoming, and that was in 1977. That's almost 50 years ago, which is a very, very short amount of time. So because of this relative newness, is what I like to call it, the amount of case law is basically, you get lawsuits, they go before a judge and jury, there's a dispute regarding the LLC, but because of the relative newness, there's not a whole lot of cases out there that a judge or jury has decided as far as how far the liability protection actually goes. So because of that, we don't know, and that's why it's uncertain. Now, corporations, they have a high level of liability protection because they've been around forever. They were started in England almost 1,000 years ago. We brought them over on the boat from England, when we founded the U.S. One of the first cases in law school down in Oregon, that was 20 years ago, was a Washington case from 1949 about what not to do with a corporation, as far as what the shareholders and the officers and directors should not do in order to expose themselves to liability. So the legal liability protection law is well established with corporations. Now, each state is different. Some states may provide greater liability protection than others. Delaware and Nevada are the top choices for liability protection. Now, you're paying for it though. Delaware is very, very expensive to incorporate, but that's why you see all the big corporations, they're incorporated in Delaware. Nevada is a good alternative. It's known as the Delaware of the West. Not quite as good, but still pretty good, but it's still expensive. Washington's kind of middle of the road, maybe a little bit more creditor friendly than business friendly as far as liability protection goes, but assuming you do everything right, then you should be okay. Oh, there we go. Now, the importance of liability protection in business insurance. When I mentioned about sole proprietorships, you really have to rely on business insurance. And I always like to bring up the movie The Incredibles. It's one of I believe it's the best Pixar movie out there. But if you recall in the movie, then when Bob Parr, he gets fired from being a superhero, he goes into the insurance business. And when the little lady comes in and she's trying to, file a claim with her insurance company, and Bob goes, "Oh, no, ma'am, we can't help you with that." And here he is on the side kind of writing down what she needs to do in order to present a valid claim. Well, his boss on the right finds out about it and says, "No, Bob, we can't do that. We do not care about our customers. We care about our shareholders." So you have to keep that in mind. So whenever I talk with clients about business insurance is great, but you need to make sure it provides all the coverage that you need, because insurance companies have a way of not paying if they don't have to. So make sure that, get it, but don't rely on it totally. That's why you need to have a limited liability entity to kind of act as the backstop for insurance, for liability exposure and protection. So back to the importance of liability protection. This goes to LLCs and corporations. What do these two entities provide? Well, they reduce and eliminate exposure of personal assets to the liabilities and claims of the business. For example, you have your XYZ LLC, that's your business. Your business gets sued because of something. It could be a breach of contract, maybe there's some negligence or something, and your business gets sued. Assuming that everything was done correctly, the owner's personal assets should be protected from those claims. So basically, and that's the whole idea, is get the LLC to act as the shield between yourself and your business assets. So keep that in mind. So, make sure you're running your business correctly and your personal assets will be protected. Now, on the flip side, what most people don't recognize is that it works also in the inverse. Say, for example, that you get in a car accident and you're at fault. Well, the third party could go after you personally, but they can't touch your business assets. Again, the shield works both ways. So if you do everything correctly, then it should provide liability protection from both sides. The whole idea is to keep everything separate. So in order to keep the business separate from yourself, do not commingle assets. And this is one of the cardinal sins of people that come in and say, I need to fix my LLC or corporation, is that they have commingled their assets. Usually find out that owner has bought personal groceries with the business account, and they do it a lot. Or they do personal loans between yourself and the company a lot. They don't, and basically a whole lot of not really a whole lot of separation between the business and the personal stuff. So make sure that you keep everything separate. When you sign contracts, sign your contracts as the owner, member, president, manager. Sign in your official capacity on behalf of the business. Do not sign in your own name, just on your own, because again, that kind of tears down that whole protection, the wall that we're trying to keep everything separate from the business to the personal. Next one is document everything. If you make a business decision, please make sure to write it down using company letterhead if possible. Write everything down. Don't kind of wing it. Handshake deals are not a great idea because again, who's to say that you're operating on behalf of the company when you could be operating on behalf of yourself? So again, write everything down. And I know we're trying to get into the paperless society. I mean, especially for lawyers, because we run on paper all the time. But unfortunately, in this case, the more paper you have, the better. If possible, hold business meetings with your partners and document them. If you own a business with your friends, your family, hold business meetings and write down everything that you said. Again, that kind of gives more structure, more semblance, more identity to the business than it is from yourself. Now, you have to be aware that with some of your vendors, like if you want to take out like a loan or for your business to expand, you might have to sign some personal guarantees with your vendors. Now, you can try to avoid them if possible, but you have to understand that you might have to just do it, and it's just the cost of doing business. It is what it is, and really the whole idea is not to quote, screw over your lenders. Really, the whole idea of setting up a limited liability company or a corporation is to protect you from unknown claims going forward. Again, those negligence claims or things like that. So again, the idea of setting this up is not to get out of any obligations with people that you generally owe money to, but it's just to avoid those unknowns that might come out into play.